Greetings all, Benny Reese West. Just going to take a weekly dive into uranium. Before I do, I'll just like to send a big thank you out to all of you who last week took the time to watch my video, and to the people who liked and subscribed, thank you very much. It was very humbling. If you do like what you see, then go ahead, hit the like and subscribe. It sort of encourages me to do even more work and deeper dives into uranium. So with that being said, let's jump in and have a look at what's happened this week. So just kicking off here with URA, and good week, bullish week, a Marabuzu candle. And this is good, open on the low, close on the high. Volume above the 20 period moving average of volume. So, there's nothing to dissuade us here. Everything's looking pretty good. Now, after we came back into a bit of balance here with the 10 Canson, we've just run again. So, yeah, a little bit hot, but, the same thing. This 10 Canson here, all it is the highest high of the last 9 periods divided by, the highest high of the last 9 periods and the lowest low of the last 9 periods divided by 2, and that just gives us a bit of a midpoint. So we are stretched a little bit away from it. So, whether we pause and rest just to let it catch up like we did here, it just shows that it's in balance in terms of time and price. We are a fair way away from the Kaijensen, which is the same methodology but use 26 periods rather than 9. But this is good. There's nothing to dissuade us here. We're well above the cloud. The cloud, you can see here, is thickening, which is good. That means the strength of the trend is developing, and there's nothing here that's spelling any sort of danger. Even just looking here at the weekly MACD, and there's nothing here to dissuade us either. It's not, if it starts getting up into these sort of hot areas, then maybe we have a look. But as things sit, the MACD line, the blue line, is still well above the signal line. There's nothing here to dissuade us from just enjoying the ride. And so this week's closed, importantly, above this first level that we'd highlighted, where we just rejected here a little bit before we corrected. But now that we've claimed this level, it'd be a simple case of now targeting the next one up here, and then just seeing if the market can hold this as a support level on its way higher. But as things sit, that's a pretty good outcome for this week. We've just got to this level. We just want to consolidate it, if anything. Before we might go straight up and challenge that. I don't know, but either way, just basic market dynamics. We now want to see this area that was resistance hold as support. That would be a good sign going forward. But now going back and looking at this on a broader sense, you just, this ties into this. So this is a good area to beat. And then we've got a bit of room, I think, if we can get through this area here. So what's this? This is about $30 to 30, say $30 to $32. And then, of course, we'd probably just be looking to target into here, which is obviously, up towards 38.40. That would be the next point of call. Now, I've sort of made the point a few times that, we had this run, then we've corrected. Now, just in a general sense, the general fabric of the market is that we run, we correct, we run. That we do that on the bullish side, we do that on the bearish side. Okay, it's the same thing over and over. So what I'd be still thinking is that that so far what we've got from here, this run is nowhere near enough to balance out this run. Okay, now just in a general pattern sense, you'd be thinking 1-to-1. So, not saying that that's going to happen, but you would be expecting a push up here into towards, at least through this and up towards this. That's how I would read this as it sits. Now, the RSI on a weekly is still something to watch because it is still diverging a little bit. And that in itself isn't necessarily a horrible thing. The thing about the RSI is it can diverge for a long time as price rises. I mean, you can see through here, that even though we were diverging, price ran from here all the way up to here before it corrected. And so, there's nothing to say that this market can't trade up, even further, and the RSI continue to just trail off a bit, okay, before we get some sort of correction that then will bring more buying and turn RSI around again for the next run. But that's just something to watch. It's not something to fret about. We'll just keep our eye on that. It's just a warning shot. But as it sits, there's nothing to dissuade us. I mean, the trend is still nice and strong, and it's still ongoing. So same thing here in the daily. So we are diverging away, but I think all we really want to do now is just to see if we can just respect 40 on any sort of pullback, okay? Because that would be a good signal of the bullish market. If we start to lose 40 and get down here, then then that point that you would think that this run for the moment is done, and we need a bit more of a correction. But that remains to be seen. But so far, so good. So I think a few videos back, we were just looking at the potential of a building uptrend within this sort of congestion. But now that we've sort of cleared that, and even this is nice that we've come and tested this, and even though we had this wobble up here, so maybe you can extend that out. But I think it's a little bit irrelevant now, in so much as what you look for, especially in a basic TA and trend analysis, but as it ties into Elliott, is that once you sort of break through this initial trend channel to the upside and things start to accelerate, then that's the sign that we're in an impulsive move. So I'm not going to try to put an Elliott count on this because it's pretty awful, but it's certainly a good sign. And the fact that we came in and took out this peak today, and we're going to close above it, well, that just opens the door to being able to go higher. So just thinking about this in the Elliott sense, coming off the low, and I think even though you would think that's not impulsive, it's actually not an impulse. I'm counting this as a leading expanding diagonal. But I had been thinking that this is wave 3 and that we've got a big 4 and then we're coming up to get the 5th. But I mean, there is another scenario where it's definitely not impossible. I won't rule it out that this isn't the top of wave 3, that we've got even more to go, and that this is in terms of its balance to what would be wave 2. I'm not thinking that, but I'm certainly open to the possibility that that maybe this is all internal part of wave 3, rather than wave 3 ending here and getting a four wave in here in an expanded flat and then going up to get 5. The RSI is just warning me not to expect that, but I'm definitely not discounting the possibility, even though this is, I don't know how I'm going to count this, but like I said, because of the way that trend is now accelerating outside of that original trend channel that we'd been looking at, that warns that there's an impulse underway. So there's definitely no reason to not expect higher prices next week. So just moving over here to energy fuels, and same thing, Marabuzu, good week. The volume probably be nice if we just saw a little bit more of a tick up there, but so far it's okay. This moving average is generally rising, but we would like to see a little bit more participation by the market. And of course, we haven't actually managed to break this peak yet, which has been the top of the run thus far. I am expecting it to break, and I am expecting the market to come in and at the very least challenge this. Okay, so we're not there yet, but that is the way I would anticipate that it's going to go. So last week we just finished at balance, and we started this week in balance. So we haven't moved that far from the Tenkans, and so there's nothing here to suggest that the market's overly hot. It's in balance, so there's no impediment for prices to go further. Even though we've got a fair bit of room down here to fall before we challenge the cloud, what we really want to see is price just keep developing, and as that happens, the cloud will rise, okay, and thicken. So what we probably will experience here is a flat bottom in the cloud, which is what we want to see, and the cloud thickening up, because that just means that the strength of the trend is good, and then any sort of pullback to hit the cloud should offer some pretty good support. And the same thing with the MACD here. There's no danger sign here. The MACD line it's not challenging the signal line at all. It's all still looking pretty rosy. So same thing applies here when I'm thinking about this run, this correction, and that it just does to me feel like there's a fair bit more to go, just in a general pattern sense. When you talk about that one-to-one move, I'm not trying to predict that it's going to get up to $15. It could, who knows, But we've got some work to do before we get there, to state the obvious. So you can see here that this would tie into this sort of stuff here, and that there's a pretty solid area that we've got to defeat, and we're a fair way away from doing that. We're up here into the mid $11 and challenging sort of $12, so we've got a bit to go. Okay, I don't know about the time, how long it's going to take. All I would do is look at this and think we've got an impulse going in here, and even if this was going to prove to be 5 waves up, I'm certainly not thinking that whatever's going on here is enough to balance this. I would still be thinking something more like that. Now, just as a point here, just because I've drawn this shape and this is going into 2025, ignore the time. I'm not trying to predict any sort of time frame here. I'm just looking more at the pattern and the shape that I'm expecting the market to throw up. Okay, so I don't know how long it's going to take to reach these. It could be there next week for all I know, but I think all you can say is that, like I said, just in terms of balance, that this is not balanced yet. This feels like it's got a fair bit more to go before it balances in a pattern sense. Now, same thing here on the RSI. We've just got to keep our eye on this. But all the same stuff still applies, but you can just see there's just a little bit of tailing there. So we've just got to be a little bit wary, because, like I said, I mean, to expect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then a correction might drag the RSI down a bit. It's not out of the question. But like I said, even if it does that, and I don't know how deep it'd go, I don't know how long it'd take, but all I'm thinking is if we just do that before we kick on, that remains a possibility and a probability across all the stocks. So just looking at this on a daily, and in terms of the divergence, we don't really have it as much, because we haven't. If this was pushing up higher and this was diverging, you'd be a little bit more, okay. But this is a good example of what some of the stuff I was talking about. The fact here is that we had this correction, but even though the RSI came right down, price just held and it's just built, and now it's it's trending back up. But what we did here is, on the last pullback on here, we've held sort of above 40, so that would just lend itself to thinking that this cycle's not over, it's got more to run. That's how I would read that. So just on bare bones, I mean, we know that we've got that big level above, that we've got a bit more work to do, but it just becomes very simple about breaking this. Okay, and the way that it's trending up, there's no reason to think that this won't be challenged in the very near future. I don't have a crystal ball, sadly, but there's nothing to make you think that this. I mean, you can just, without even putting the trend lines in, you can just see the slope of the movement. Previously we're sort of looking at just containing this consolidation into a trend channel, and we haven't really broken it conclusively, like say in URA has and some of the others, to make you think that this is definitely impulsive now. But we'll just see, rising tide floats all boats sort of thing. So we just want to see price come up and test this. So as long as the rest of those stocks drag up, then I would think that Energy Fuels is going to at least come up and challenge this. And at that point, we'd be going, okay, well, look, this, I don't know how I'm going to count this, how I'm going to deal with it. 1, flat 2, and then we come up for a bigger 3 perhaps. But, it's a bit of a lagger, but, that's something to keep our eye on there. The Elliott on this doesn't remain as clear, so I'm sort of more inclined to think that we're reaching up to get this 5th wave up here before we correct. So how far this runs, we don't know, of course, but like I said, I mean, you can just see that the bare bones trend that's going in here. Pardon me, I should probably do that in a channel. You just look at that and think, well, there's no reason to do anything here other than stay long. Okay, that's just how I'd be reading it. It's trending up. It's getting higher highs and higher lows. Stick with it. I mean, this is your first point of call. Let's go. Cyclically here, it looks pretty good too. In terms of, this looks like a pretty, even though we've got a lot of wobble through the 10-day moving average here. Day 18, day 22, that just looks like a good half cycle high, half cycle low, and that we can expect that, we're going to push on. Like I said, I just think we're going to come and challenge this at least in the near future. And hopefully we just get above that, okay? And the other thing is that we're now, we're we're well clear of this 10-week moving average. We don't look in any danger of putting a cycle that fails below. So a failed cycle would mean that price is going to break this low, and I'm not feeling that. So no reason to think that this isn't going to be the area that gets challenged first. So I think just in a general sense we're going to test here before we're going to test here. I can't rule out that we just fall over and don't do that, of course, but as just for all the reasons I just said, the way this looks, I can't see this happening before this does. So that's how we sit with energy fuels. Just ride that trend. Now, just flicking over to Denison. I bought in the ADX here. It's probably the same across them all, but with the ADX sitting at 42, this is a strong trend, and this has been a great week. Maybe the volume's a little bit not as much as what we'd like, but Marabuzu strong, and we've just touched the top of this. We haven't quite been able to close above it, but the same thing applies. There's nothing here to freak us out. Everything looks pretty strong, and there's no danger sign here as it sits. Now, we have run away from the Tenkan-sen pretty strongly this week, and that's fine. That's all right. But you would just expect that this sort of area that we're just running into here might just halt the market, which isn't a bad thing if we just pause and take our breath, just let the line catch up. But like I said, the volume's it's above its average, which is good. Creeping up, you'd like to see it up here. You'd like to see a bit more involvement because it's going up pretty well here this week. Now, the same thing applies here in terms of I don't believe that this movement and the subsequent correction has yet to be balanced. So I am expecting it to go higher, but again, we just have to be wary of this because it could herald just a pause in prices in the not too distant future. But so far so good, and like we just discussed, just looking at this now, it is pretty obvious that we've got this area here that we're just going to test out for now, and then above that remains to be our ultimate. I wouldn't say ultimate because I think it's got more to go, but the next point of call, let's just put it that way. And that, of course, you could just tie that into these sort of areas that we found 10 plus years ago. Okay, so I'm not really going to comment about whatever was going on through here. I'm just more concentrating on the subsequent correction, and do we run again? That's what we're looking at. So we've just come in this week and we've just peaked above this high, just a little wick above there. A little bit of divergence, so we just got to be a bit mindful of that. But certainly the way that this looks trend-wise, I mean, this looks like more your classic sort of style of impulsive move. So when you draw it up, it's quite simple that we had this trend channel that we've now accelerated out of. Okay, and that, like I said, I'm not going to try to put Elliott through this, but this is just the general sort of movement. That's what you want to see. Okay. That's just a good swing pattern going higher. There's no and the trend has accelerated, which is what you'd expect out of an impulsive third wave through the trend channel. So that all ticks the box. It's all looking pretty good. So looking at Cameco now, and another great week, nice and strong, volume above the average. ADX is super strong up here at 50. Great trend. Okay, there's still nothing here. We had this little wobble through here, but we've recaptured, so that's fine, and we're on our way. We are hot, of course, so whenever we run hot, we can always think about a correction like we just a correction like we saw here, just to bring things back into a bit of balance. We need buyers and sellers, otherwise we got no market. But as things sit here on the weekly, no reason to do anything. So just looking as things develop here, we've just touched through this area just to finish out the week. So it's the same thing, what we'd want to see is that this area becomes support before we go and challenge, these sort of zones that we were sort of highlighting last week, and this was a broker price target. So, everything still looks pretty much on track here. I don't think there's any reason to do anything. Even now, this trend channel that had been highlighted, we're now moving even more out of that. So that's just yet another good sign that things are progressing as we would like. So this, the Elliott case here is a little bit different. And I've highlighted before that you could potentially start the impulse from here, even though the way I've been counting it, I've started it from here. But either way you dice it, I mean, this is the thing, even looking at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I mean, that would be the kind of pattern that you'd think about in terms of 5 waves in an impulse, where we've got a nice, big, long third wave. But in saying that, even though I've counted it sort of this way, it's still the same sort of idea that we've got this big, strong third wave, even though the fourth wave was a big expanded flat. So the RSI here is a little bit more prevalent in terms of we are getting some divergence from this peak to this peak. So that is just a warning shot, but we just wait and see for this to play out, because it doesn't, I'm not sure when it's going to finish. I'm not going to try to Elliott through this section just yet, but always remain wary of the correction. Now, just to clear things up, I did suggest that that we could correct back as far as 50%, but that doesn't necessarily have to happen. I mean, we don't know where this is going to run to. For all we know, it could run, and this run it could get up to here. Okay, and then the correction from here might only be back to this sort of zone. Okay, and that still fits the pattern. Nothing says it has to retrace 50% or 61.8% or even deeper. Okay, and once again, forget about this time. I'm not predicting time, but we can't really set up what we think a correction might look like until this is done and dusted, and I don't think it is yet. Okay, we do have some warning shots, but right now you've just got to stick with the trend. And so this is just the same thing again. This is what we wanted to see. This is what we highlighted as the trend channel as the market kind of consolidated, but we've just moved through it. So and we took this high out, and we're continuing on our merry way. So there's no reason to think that this can't reach higher up into those areas. But as a word of warning, of course, we are just sitting here on that zone. So we've got to be a bit mindful of that. But once again, there's nothing here to make me think that this is in immediate danger of turning over. So just in a cyclical sense, I mean, we're still running here, but the fact that we've now reached day 44 would suggest to me that this is going to be a right translated cycle. So I'm still looking for a cycle low to come in, sometime in these dates, but we're not there yet. So the cycle low would just be a downturn below the 10-day moving average. But I think at this point, especially as the time's gone by, I mean, this cycle is not going to fail. We're not going to fail on this cycle. I think we're not getting down here anytime soon, I hope. So yeah, I mean, I think this cycle is beginning to look like it's close to running its course. I mean, 6, maybe we get 7 before and 7 might herald the correction, and that will be a failed cycle. So what would happen is that we go like that. We'd fail below wherever the cycle low here is going to be. But that could be it. That could be the correction, and then we turn up and we make an intermediate cycle low, and we start running again. So yeah, this still looks pretty good in the short term. Like I said, I think it's going to be right translated. It's highly unlikely to fail, but we'll have to wait and see what happens after that. So coming into mid to late December, we'll just see what the market does, of course. But if we start slipping below the 10-day moving average, and we'll start to think about putting in a cycle low, but we're not there yet. UEC, and another great week for UEC on big volume. This is my favoured one for an Elliott, and we've come up now, and we've just reached into this top here. We're yet to break it, but I'm expecting that will happen. But one word of warning here. Let's just have a look at this. The trend is good. We're still, 34 is still pretty good. This is, man, that's starting to get pretty warm. And I think I've warned about this before, and just sort of look at this. This top here in the MACD line coincided here. We're through that. So we are running very strongly, but we just got to be a little bit mindful of that. Okay. and even the Ichimoku, like we were at balance last week, but we've just really sprinted away from it again. So even though this cloud is now, we've had a twist, and we're dragging higher, and the cloud is thickening out a little bit. But personally, what I would like to see is, you want to see the Senkou span B flatten like that. You want a flat cloud bottom like this, whilst this runs further, and just to thicken out that cloud to strengthen the trend. Because I think the problem is, what this is telling us is that in terms of time, this has gone a long way very quickly, and that's what the cloud is telling us. Because when it runs very quickly, the cloud stays rather thin, which means to me a little bit that it's a little bit imbalanced in terms of time and price. But remains to be seen. Like I said, the same thing again. I mean, the trend is super strong. There's no reason to worry about it at this point. And so, these sort of peaks here just remain the immediate target if we can just break through this top, which it looks like we're almost destined to do at some point soon. So, it's not that far away, really. We're talking about $7.10 to $7.50 sort of thing, that just these old peaks that we get to come in here and challenge it. Now, this is, once again, this is just dithering a bit, and it is running historically super duper hot. You just look back, look at this peak, and what coincided here. It came off. So we've got to be a little bit mindful. I mean, here's a good example of long-term divergence. So even though here we diverged between this peak and this peak, I mean, the time that went by, this is November 21, and we didn't peak out until April 22. So what's that? The best part of 6 months that we diverged. So like I said, we can diverge for a long time. But it's just, we just remain wary, okay? Because what this was telling us is that once we got above this peak and the RSI was not coming up to challenge it, that there was potentially a problem. And of course, we saw this great big correction down through here. Now, generally speaking, I've much preferred the look of this as an Elliott count through this whole thing. Because the 4 is a little bit more balanced, and even though it's a little bit hard to make the impulsive case here, it's the same thing that we've just been talking about through all of it. Even though this one kind of is still holding within its general trend. Okay, we haven't seen that acceleration out of the initial sort of trend channel, but this one didn't dither. It didn't spend as much time consolidating. Okay, so you could probably even make the argument. I'm not sure. I'm not really done this. Yeah, you can see what I mean. It's sort of containing within the trend for the moment. But I still think that you put it all aside, and even just looking at this, in an Elliott sense, what you do is you connect 2 and 4 off the top of what you think is 3, and you look for 5 to peak out at the top of the trend channel. I mean, it doesn't always happen that way. But, we've still got this going on, so that, makes me think that there is a good chance that we get the top of a fifth wave. But it's the same thing that I was pointing out to in regards to Cameco, and just looking at this, that this could be much more bullish, because, the correction, this doesn't look anywhere near balanced to its first run. So that's why I'd be expecting it to go higher. I'm not going to make a prediction on that. But that's just how I would be thinking about the market itself, because that's the general shape that you're looking for. So this doesn't look done. But in a word of warning, I would just suggest that there's a good chance that, wherever we come up here to finish, that we do correct back down a bit before we go on further. But there's nothing to alert us to that just here and now, other than we are running quite strongly. We're a little bit hot, but I would think that this is going to come and get challenged relatively soon. That's the way I'd think about it. So just looking at URNM, and another great week, Marubozu, and we haven't quite broken that top. So that still remains, this still remains the area that we've just got to defeat. But the volume here is still really good. There's plenty of interest in it. It looks like there's plenty of buying going on. We've just moved out of a week of balance, and we've just exploded away a little bit here, Marubozu style. But this is an example of what I want to see in some of the other ones. You can see here, I want to see this flat cloud bottom that we've just starting to develop here. And then we want to see the leading span A just continue to drag away, so we get a nice thick cloud which just underlines the strength of the trend, which, this again here too is the ADX sitting at 50. That's a pretty strong trend, and there's nothing here to alert us that there's any sort of problem going on. It all still looks pretty good. So I think next week it's just, now that we've beaten this peak, we sort of, we tested back down here a bit and we just kind of dithered a bit in a correction, but we're coming up to test this. Now, this hasn't really done what some of the others have done in terms of the trend. I'd still like to see an acceleration through that, and I guess if we take this peak out early next week, then we will accelerate through this general trend channel. I mean, we've just kind of closed above it today, but it's not conclusive as yet. But the top here, this near-term peak is pretty close. I expect it to get taken out, and that's just a matter of coming back and challenging this. So far so good. I don't think there's anything to worry about here. Just keep riding this trend. Same thing again. There is a little bit of this going on, but like I said, we've just these little downturns here. I mean, we didn't even get close to 40. This was the lowest we got to at 46. So, since the correction finished, which I think, obviously was here, then we're holding in a bullish stance. So you would think that the RSI would come back up again, but it'll just become a question of, the price gets above this top. This is what will set up the main divergence. It'll get above this high, but the RSI won't get as high as this. So that's how we would get, and it might be very slight. Even sometimes it can be a double top, but that sort of thing. That's what you'd be looking at to think, okay, maybe this run now is just done for the moment. The run off the bottom. So it remains to be seen, but that's the sort of thing I'd be looking for. So just thinking about the cycles here, we're on day 31 here. This looks like a pretty good candidate for a half cycle high and low. Like I said, I would think that this isn't going to be the top of the cycle. I don't think. I think we will probably push on a little bit further, but the average cycles would suggest that coming into here early to sort of this early deck, that would probably herald the top of this cycle. So maybe depending on how far back down we go, we've certainly got more room to run here. It's a little bit different from Kamiko, which might mean that I've got to rework my cycles in Kamiko. But I think this is only daily cycle 4, so whether or not we start failing, I mean, it would fit more in an Elliott sense that that we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, then we get a 5th, and then we'd get the correction, and that would be the first intermediate cycle. But that remains to be seen. So all we can really do is react to what price does. Remember, price leads Elliott, not the other way around. The Elliott gets fitted around whatever price is doing. But right now, I want to see that extension out of the trend channel. We're not quite there yet. So now just looking at the physical trust, same thing again. Great week, above the average volume, Marabuzu, everything looks super strong. And we're just continuing to go higher in this one. It's pretty good. I mean, we're at 44 on the ADX. That's good. The MACD is still pretty damn strong. We don't have as much history to go off here, but this is very high. So that it's not. If this starts turning back down, then we start getting alerted. But until it happens, you just go with it. I don't think there's any reason to worry about any of this as it sits. And the same thing sort of applies to the run. The correction, pardon me, the correction into what I think is a triangle, and it's not quite as balanced. It looks closer than a lot of the others, but I certainly wouldn't be calling for a major top here just yet. I mean, one thing to note is that we actually have reached 100% of this run. It just means to be wary, I think, and not panicky or anything, because like I was saying, there's nothing to say that this is only going to be Well, I mean, the fact that this is a triangle is not perfect, but I could make the same case that I made in Kamiko, that maybe it's 1, 2. Somehow you got to count this as 3, triangle 4 coming up for 5th. It's a little bit more betwixt and between. So I think we've just got to be a little bit wary of this one. And this is just bogging down now. Okay, so it's definitely not panic stations, but this one's a little bit more interesting, I think, just in terms of where it's at and how it's responded to recent history. So we do have to be a little bit mindful of this RSI just gassing a bit here. But let's just take a look at it, because as this is running, we can just see this momentum waning. But, we did hold 40. We did hold above 40. So, if this starts dropping below 40, then, well, that would mean that the price has begun to dribble off. So make of that what you will. I mean, I don't know if that means that maybe people are just not jumping into this as much, and they're more trying to get into some of the other stocks that look like they got a bit more upside. But in saying that, I mean, the swing pattern here and the trend is still well intact. Okay, up, down, up, down, up. Now, is that 5 waves? Well, I'd have a pretty major problem with that, because we've got a bit of an overlap here. So I don't know, but initially I thought it would look better as an Elliott pattern if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. But the fact that we've kicked on again means I have to think more about it. But saying that, what we can do here is when we look at this, let me just change that. And this is what I was talking about with corrections. Maybe what we've got going in here, which would be more bullish, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If that was correct, that we had 1 and a 2 like that, and then we came up here for a 3, and then we came down here for a 4, and then we came up and got a 5 like that. Well, maybe what that means is this whole thing is wave 1 of an internal wave 1 of the larger 5th wave. So what I'm getting at is that, let's see, where are we here? Let's just bring up the count. Is that what I'm getting at? Is that we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that this is all internally part of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to come up and get this 5th wave up here. So there's definitely ways to look at this that we could be going further. It's just now a question of whether or not this is going to be a big extension in the 5th, or if we're just going to get 5 waves finishing here, and then we can expect a more major downturn. Okay, but the way this little internal's going would lead me to think that, hey, there's probably a little bit more to go, because this itself looks 1, 2, 3. Pardon me. I've confused myself a bit here. Sorry. What I meant is maybe this is wave 1, and then we've got this 50% pullback for wave 2, and then we go up and get a little bit more. Okay, a little bit higher. Something more like that. Okay. So that's how I look at it. And the fact that this is, and this is just a classic swing pattern where we come up, we came back, tested 50%, now we've taken the top out. So, we could expect that to go further. But once again, price leads Elliott. Elliott doesn't lead price. So all we do is we look at what's happening, and then we just try to put together a roadmap of what we think is the most likely outcome. And to me, I think this has got some validity that we could just push on a little bit further, and that it just means that the 5th wave out of this movement, 1, 2, 3, 4, is just going to be probably an extension. Okay, and we see that in the markets a fair bit, but that remains to be seen. We've just got to wait and see. So I think this has just gone on way too long for me. I don't usually do videos this long. I might have been inspired by the amount of views we got last week, but just looking here at URNM, look, it's the same thing over and over, okay? And I mean, you can see what needs to happen here, and the fact that we had this consolidating chop and we've broken out of it, that's good. That's what we want to see. That would lead us to think that there's a good chance that we can go higher. So that, I think, is just the point of call. I mean, we just look at these consolidating chop that we had, we draw up the trend channels around that, and we just watch for price to then move through. Some of the stocks it's already moved, some of them it hasn't done it yet. But these immediate peaks that we found at September, the stocks that haven't broken those yet are the ones that we want to watch. So we've got a good gauge of market breadth through the whole thing. But once again, this looks pretty good. So look, I'm going to leave it there because this has gone on too long. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. See you next week. Bye for now.